Hi there, everybody. We are at Mallows Bay Park today. We're going out on a kayak to take a tour of the ghost fleet of Mallows Bay. It is it's a sanctuary. It's a place where hundreds of World War I era wooden ships uh, finally met their demise. We'll get into the story a little bit here, but there's hundreds of World War I era ships that uh, that are sunk here, and there's remnants left over, and it's become a marine sanctuary too. Lots of animals and trees and things growing. So
They never got to fulfill their war destinations.
they never did get across the ocean. So we're going to go kayak around and check this place out, and we'll take you along with us. All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Located on the Potomac River south of Washington, D.C., Mallows Bay is a protected marine sanctuary including shipwrecks dating back to the Revolutionary War. Most of the ships sunk here, however, are from the United States emergency fleet effort at the end of World War I. In 1917, the United States raced to build 1,000 wooden ships to help with the war effort to deliver supplies to the Allies in Europe. In 18 months, 296 wooden ships were built, and less than half ever made the Atlantic voyage. When the war ended, just a year after the shipbuilding program began, the wooden ships were obsolete, and a buyer eventually bought the lot of 200 remaining ships and towed them to a shipyard in Alexandria, Virginia to be stripped. What was left of 31 worthless hulls was towed to Mallows Bay, where they were tied together and burned. The remaining 169 ships were towed there and abandoned to scavengers over the years. What remains of the ship's hulls lies just beneath the surface and is supporting trees and plant life. In 2019, Mallows Bay was designated a National Maritime Sanctuary. At low tide, more of the hulls are visible above the waterline. And right out here is Quantico. And we are heading out towards the Acomac out here, which is a ferry that was ran aground and was abandoned here in the 70s. It is not part of the Ghost Fleet. But we're going to go check that out because it's one of the things you notice the most in Mallows Bay. How you doing, Mrs. Coaster? She is doing good, paddling away. It was really chilly earlier. Now it's at least in the 50s, so it's relatively pleasant and but cool. But we're going to see some of the hulls, or some of what remains just under the waves of these couple hundred ships that were abandoned and have just been sort of rotting here over the last 100 years. Not quite that many, but pretty close. Now we are much closer to the Acomac. What's left of the
ship ground here in Mallows Bay. Now we should turn towards them. What do you think, dear? This is not one of the ghost ships at Mallows Bay, but it is the biggest, most noticeable hulk. We're going to be passing over some of the other ships over there closer to the shore from the original wooden ships. And we'll be floating around the Acomac here.
A majority of the ships that we have in Mallows, so where the Bay Bridge Tunnel is now, after the Bay Bridge Tunnel was built, she actually
Another wreck just up ahead here that we're going to be going by.
thunder, lightning, things like that during a really bad storm. I don't think that's true, mainly because this is definitely waterlogged. It's been sitting out here for how long? But that's what she thinks it is. I think it was both times actually arson. But again, this was all before.
It's pretty cool seeing the Acomac is now behind us and checking out some more of these World War I era ships. Right over here you can see the white buildings on the horizon there, Quantico. We can't go there, but this has been pretty fun so far. It's basically going to be about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours on the water, checking out what's left of these World War I ships, most of which are just under the surface right now since it's high tide. You can see all these trees along here. These are all another ship hull. I can see, I don't know if you can see right under the water, there's the hull of a ship. So we're at high tide, so some of them aren't sticking up out of the water, but you can see all these trees along here. These are growing along hulls of the ships that are still rotting just beneath the water surface. And we'll insert a Google satellite shot of the bay because you can definitely see the hulls of the ships, and very, very interesting. And it's warming up, so that's been a nice plus too. Let's see, wooden nails sticking right at the end of her paddle there. That's from ships that were right over.
If they did start their journey over to Europe, they would have run into issues when they actually got there to drop off the supplies closer to it. But that large pin would have gone down into that metal hoop, allowing the rudder to pivot back and forth.
So this is a stern post of the ship where the rudder and the propeller would have been attached. It's sticking all the these trees are growing up on the remains of the ship.
You'll be able to see that some of them are actually tree pins.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that another boat over there?
You can definitely see right in here. There's another ship here in the remains. At low tide, you can see a little bit more of the ships, and maybe some pieces protruding out of the water. But you still see a bunch of things, and pretty fascinating to realize these are all from World War I era, constructed 100 years ago, and their remains just kind of sitting here just under the water, rotting away, but also becoming sort of a sanctuary to marine life and the trees.
We'll paddle her again. It's really. This is the same ship. The tona, so you just paddled right alongside of her, and her stern is definitely the best preserved we have, pretty much. And then if you look out at like the second rib that's kind of sticking out from it, you'll see that there's a cable hanging off the edge of it. That is the original cable that was used to actually tie these ships down to each other.
Come over here, you can see a lot more rows of nails sticking out of the hull of the ship. And a big section of stern. This is the Acomac out there, and more ships in the foreground. Paddling right along the edge of the SS Boone here. This is one of the few ships that got a send-off when it was launched. We've already gotten stuck for a few seconds on it. It's right underneath the hydrillas here, vegetation. Everybody's circling around the ship. And it's right here between us. That's the end of our tour. Did you enjoy this, dear?
It was interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. And the weather ended up being kind of nice by the end of the day, didn't it?
Yeah, kind of hot. Could take off my sweatshirt.
Wish she didn't have a sweatshirt on now, does she? Yeah, it was a really interesting tour, and I'd like to come back out here sometime where you can just meander some more and look at all the ships and the remnants that are out of the water, and just the nature too. Lots of osprey nests and things like that along the way. So this is a good time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go kayaking all the time, and it's been a couple of years. We haven't gone recently. But during a pandemic, this seemed like a really brilliant thing to do. You're outside, you can be social distance from everybody, and just a fascinating piece of history and nature. So it was really interesting. So that's the end of this video. Comment below and let us know if you've seen, if you've been to Mallows Bay. Have you gone kayaking out here at Mallows Bay? It's really an interesting place. Remember, kids, have a good time all the time.